you understand how grateful I am that you exist, that you are here, that you're not tired, you're not weary, that you have come together to organize and to fight back. This is so incredibly important. You know, Jim just talked about the Citizens United case and the Citizens United 2 case that just the Supreme Court just handed down. I have to tell you, money is going to be the end of our democracy if we don't do something about it. In Washington and Beacon Hill, even in our local governments, money. If you have money, you have influence. If you have money, you have power. If you have money, you can buy a congressman, you can buy a state legislator, you can buy a governor, you can buy whoever you want. It is corrupting our system. And I'm going to tell you, give you an example of where of how it kind of manifests itself in Washington. In addition to the fact that every piece of legislation that we've been considering lately in the House of Representatives usually is about helping somebody well off, a corporate entity or an individual who's very well off, helping to get more well off. I mean, that's kind of the focus of Congress. But I'm on the Agriculture Committee, and one of the things that I have been really frustrated about is the fact that we have kind of gone down this road of eliminating the social safety net in this country. The Republicans in Congress came up with this idea to cut food stamps by $40 billion. They didn't succeed, but they ended up cutting it by $20 billion. And we had a hearing the other day in the Agriculture Committee. The Secretary of Agriculture was there, and everybody was patting themselves on the back for this farm bill that had an additional $8.6 billion cut in food stamps in it. And so even the Democrats were. And what I said is that it was my turn to speak. I said to the Secretary of Agriculture, "It's really nice that you're here." I said to the chairman, "Thank you for holding this hearing." So we all could pat each other on the back. But the bottom line is there's not a lot to pat each other on the back for. Because this is a farm bill that actually makes hunger worse in America. And we should be ashamed of that. But we also should be ashamed of the fact that throughout the entire deliberation of the farm bill, we never had one single hearing on SNAP. The subcommittee on nutrition never held a hearing. The full committee never held a hearing. And yet they advocated a cut of up to $40 billion. The problem in Congress, and the problem in the State House, and the problem even in city government and town government is that the poor in this country have no place at the table. And where this movement comes in is you need to be their voice. You need to be their advocates. There's no way we should have ever considered any kind of reforms or cuts or anything in SNAP without having the people who are who are the beneficiaries before the committee. I mean, they know more about the reality of being poor than a lobbyist and an expert, even the Secretary of Agriculture. The other day, Joe O'Brien and I spent a night at a homeless shelter here in Worcester. It's called the Interfaith Hospitality Network. And it's a family shelter. And so there were all families in this shelter. And these are people who, many of them had a job. And they earn they earn just a little bit above what they're supposed to earn in order to qualify for state subsidized shelter programs. So they don't qualify for that. But they earn so little that there's no way they can afford a rent here. And so these families were telling us that they moved in with relatives for a while, who were in state subsidized housing, and one of the neighbors complained, and they got thrown out. And then they went to another place, and then they got thrown out. And now they're in this shelter. And these people had kids. One of the things they were telling us is that, moving around all the time means I got to take my kid out of this school, put him in that school, put him in that school, put him in that school. There's no way that these kids are going to get an education. One woman's son, 16 years old, has severe attention deficit disorder, but is in a school that is helping him. And she is grateful for that. And they're telling her she should, this is in Worcester, they're telling her she should look for housing in New Bedford. And she's like, what am I going to do about my son? This is crazy. We need to understand in this country, when we talk about the poor, when we talk about poverty, it's not just people who are unemployed. It is people who are working. When members of Congress decry SNAP and food stamps and nutrition programs, they say they ought to get a job. I remind them that majority of able-bodied people on SNAP work. They work. Now, if you have a job and you're working full-time, I think you would prefer to earn enough so you didn't need to qualify for public assistance. Bottom line is we need to raise the minimum wage nationally. We need to do it here in the state. I quite frankly think it needs to be more than $10.10 an hour, but the bottom line is, that's a hell of a lot better than where it is right now. We need to insist on a vote. We need to make that happen, because that's one of the ways we lift people out of poverty. You make work pay. This is not a question. The debate about poverty is no longer a question about people should work. People are working. The working people in this country are stuck in poverty. And that is something that should bother every single member of Congress, every single state legislature, every single governor. I mean, this is a problem in this country. And in the United States of America, the richest country in the history of the world, we have 49 million Americans who are hungry. 49 million. There is not a congressional district in the United States of America that is hunger-free. There is not a single community in the United States that is hunger-free. 17 million of these people are children in the United States of America. We have a hunger problem. And what do we do in Congress? We don't even talk about it. We don't even invite them to come before committees to hear what they have to say. We don't even take the time to talk to these people to find out what is it that we need to do to help extend a ladder of opportunity so that you can become self-sufficient, so that you get on your feet. I love the president, and he's talking about income inequality, but I think we need to do a little bit more than talk about it. I've asked him for 6 years to do a White House conference on food and nutrition. And the reason why is because in this country, we actually do not have a plan to end hunger. So if you ask the Secretary of Agriculture, how do you end hunger in this country? Well, he might say, well, we have this program and that program, but there's no plan. You ask the president, there's no plan. I've met with the president, I've met with the First Lady, I've met with the Secretary of Agriculture, I've met with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, I've met with the White House Chief of Staff, I've even met with the White House chef to try to get this going. And the reason why is because we need to take on these big problems. One of the problems in government, at every level, is that we've got to this point where we kind of think in very small terms. Like if we move a stop sign from one side of the street to the other, boy, that's a big achievement. We need to take on these big problems of income inequality. We need to take on this big problem of hunger. Let's end hunger in America. There's nothing wrong with that. I stand before all of you today, and I say this when I even speak to business groups. I'm a liberal Democrat who believes in dynamic and efficient government. This is a big country. We have big problems. And the notion that a teensy-weensy government is somehow going to solve those big problems is a little bit, misguided in terms of thinking. We need to be thinking in terms of solving big problems. Not saying that they're insolvable. We need to take on the issue of poverty. I believe in the New Deal. I still think it was one of the greatest social initiatives in the history of our country. I'm a believer in a great society. I believe in Social Security. I believe in Medicare. And I think the discussion in state legislatures and in Washington, is too focused on this issue of debt. I want to get rid of the debt as much as anybody else, but I want to get rid of the debt in a way that doesn't make people's lives worse. If we move toward a goal of full employment, that'll help reduce the debt. Instead, what we're talking about is cut. Those of you who are on Social Security, we're gonna cut your benefits. Those of you who are on Medicare, they want to cut your benefits. They want to make your life more miserable so that somehow we can balance the budget. That's crazy. We all elect people not to make our lives more miserable. We elect people to try to lift us up, make things better for people. This notion that we all have to sacrifice, I get it. But the people who've been sacrificing time and time again are the people who can least afford it. Telling somebody on SNAP that they're going to cut their benefit, which we did, Congress did that, every single person on the food stamp program got a reduction in their benefit. And then because of what the Farm Bill did, in certain states like Massachusetts, people were in line for even a bigger cut. In some cases, up to $130 a month cut in monthly benefits for SNAP. Now, even before all these cuts took place, people were still going to food banks. And they were going to churches and mosques and synagogues because they didn't have enough to eat. They didn't have enough to eat. So, and we're cutting that because we're going to balance the budget to pay for some subsidy for some rich agribusiness. You know, if you were a sushi farmer, by the way, you did really well. Sushi rice farmers did very well in the Farm Bill. But if you're a poor person relying on SNAP to put food on your table, you got screwed. And it is shameful. Every member of the United States Congress should be ashamed of the fact that 49 million Americans are hungry. This does not have to be. And so, part of what I want you to all understand here is that we need to change the narrative and the debate in this country. It has to move away from the status quo, which is the only way you can balance the books is by cutting, especially on programs that help the least among us. We need to change the narrative and say, the way we're going to reduce the debt is we're going to put people to work. We're going to pay them a livable wage, not a minimum wage, but a livable wage, so that when they work in this country, they'll be able to qualify. We're going to balance the budget. We're going to by investing in an important, massive public works project to rebuild our roads and our bridges and our highways. And, we're going to put people back to work with a new green energy initiative, so we can get off our reliance on fossil fuels, and we can start a whole new kind of industrial revolution. One of the great things about Worcester is this is the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, we have to have a new one right now, and it should be in the area of green energy. And we're going to balance the budget by not getting involved in any more wars like Iraq and getting the hell out of Afghanistan now. Not tomorrow, not next year. I don't want to miss Status Forces Agreement. That is the most corrupt government in the entire world, and we've lost too much in terms of blood and treasure. It is time to end that. And I'll go one step further. I would reevaluate whether or not we need all these military bases around the world. If you were, think about it for a minute. We're in Worcester. What if China had a military base in Holden? I think we'd be pretty agitated by that. We'd come to resent it. This idea that our power can only be, demonstrated through flexing our military muscle is crazy. People resent us for that. I've been to a lot of countries around the world. I got to tell you, I've never had anyone. When I tour these poor villages, no one's ever come up and said, "Hey, could you send me a rocket launcher? Oh, how about a military base? Or how about more weapons?" What they want is food. What they want is help to be able to become self-sufficient and farm their land. What they want is medical support so that their kids don't die unnecessarily. I mean, they want what we all want. They want security for their families. I don't get it in terms of what's happening. And so here's the deal. We have to fight back. And locally it begins by actually talking to people. We did an immigration rally yesterday here in Worcester, urging the president to stop deportations and urging Boehner to schedule a vote on comprehensive immigration reform. That issue, if you listen to talk radio, has become so ugly that I cringe every time I hear some people get into that debate and how they diminish the importance of so many of these people who are struggling to basically have a good life for themselves and their families. But part of our job needs to be, we need to be on talk radio. We need to do the counter. We need to blog, to counter what somebody else has blogged on some of these issues. We need to talk to our neighbors. When we're in a group and somebody says something that is really off base, I think we need to respond to it. You can't let things go. And I think part of the problem right now with a lot of what we're dealing with, especially in Washington, is that people like me over the years kind of thought that some of this rhetoric was so outrageous that nobody would buy it, that it wouldn't sink in. And so when people talk about SNAP, I hear them all the time say, it's the most fraudulent program in government. No, it's the most efficient program in government. Lowest fraud rate. I mean, if the Department of Defense had the fraud rate of SNAP, God, I'd be dancing on this table. There'd be trillions of dollars in savings because that department is so mismanaged. I mean, but people don't know that. And, you know, and they believe what they hear. And so we have to push back. We have to push back. So I'll close with this. I used to have an old history professor who used to say, the world will not get better on its own. When I had him in high school, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But I do now. I do now. Let me tell you, nothing good happens unless like-minded people come together and fight back. And you need to know, I say this at the beginning, and I say this at the end, as somebody who's on the front lines of Washington, who, you know, some days I wonder, you know, what the hell am I doing here? I should go to a desert island and pick coconuts the rest of my life and be more productive. You being here is really kind of a jolt of inspiration for me. And you need to know that. So I'm with you, and I wish you all the very best, and keep fighting. And I really believe we're gonna win. We're gonna win. So thank you.